Soka, the University of Western Sydney, the Student Climate Action and Democratic Renewal, was actually a project based on improving student participation in Australian democratic institutions. Given your interest in these things, I'm just wondering, is your brief actually point to that?
Does the brief point to the fact that it deals
with democratic renewal? The project actually was about improving student participation in democratic institutions in Australia.
For a particular side of politics,
that is one. That's one interpretation of the information that's in the brief I've been given. It's an interpretation that I think reflects the perspective that certain people in the room might come to it. But I don't think there's any doubt here that this government has a responsibility to use precious taxpayer funds as wisely as is possible, and
we'll get to that. We'll get to that
in doing its investments in research and otherwise. That is always front of mind.
All right, now
could I just say that I really feel uncomfortable and I don't like the trashing of researchers and their work that is happening in this area.
I'm sorry, Senator Faruqi, you do not have the right to make those sort of statements. It's not a chamber for debating. You did not have the call. You were not raising a point of order. Senator Carr.
Thank you. So a number of these projects were, of course, the rejected projects were relating to China. Was there a particular emphasis on the Minister's rejection on China research projects?
I'll take on notice the substance of what you say, but my understanding is that it is based on the public interest aspect.
Well, that's why I've put on notice that I'd like the copies of the public interest statements for each of these projects. Right? We'll establish that basis because, you see, I mean, another way of looking at this, Senator Stoker, was to acknowledge that the government actually funded a number of Chinese research projects. Right?
Sure.
Which is, well,
the government doesn't have a problem with researching matters that relate to China. The government has a problem with not using taxpayer funds wisely and in the public interest. I'm sure you wouldn't suggest that all projects that mention the word China are created equal.
On the contrary, I'm making the point there's some inconsistency in the approach that's been taken. That's why I want to see the criteria. If it is ministerial whim, ministerial discretion that's being exposed here on the basis of whether or not he feels like supporting a project versus another, well, we should know what criteria has been used, because there were a number of projects funded associated with the People's Republic of China, and presumably they met all the criteria, as did these projects that were rejected.
Look, Senator Carr, this isn't your first ride around the block, and you know that as trends in academia and public discussions change, people tailor their applications or cut the cloth to fit the moment.
I see.
Lots of people have inserted the words China and climate change to try and attract funding because they are topics du jour, but that doesn't mean they are projects created equal, and the Minister is very happy to cut through the window dressing and get to the substance of what a project adds to the public interest.
I'm interested in that. See, the China
It's got to be value for the taxpayer.
The China Belt and Road Initiative, New Model for Economic Governance project, that's DP 220-101-1632, the University of New South Wales, $283,000, 283,250 was funded. Political connections in clean tech, my God, a climate change policy in China, funded
this shows
$391,000.
But Senator Carr, this proves the point. The government isn't making some decision here based on a political choice.
I'm trying to establish
it's about the merits and the substance of individual proposals.
I am just interested to know, is there any logical and coherent rationale for the Minister's decision, or is it whim? Did he get up on the wrong side of the bed and decide, I don't like this project, these people are not to be funded?
Senator Carr, you are a master of the theatrics of this place, but you know as well as I do that ministerial discretion is provided for by the Act, is perfectly ordinary.
And used 3 times only by this government.
And that his decisions are made in accordance with the criteria and recorded in the usual way.
That is not true. There is no criteria. There is no criteria. The minister has acted on the basis of his discretion. And I'd like to know what is his criteria, because it's not apparent from what he said. It can't be the basis of the national interest, because we've got the national interest statements. They met all those criteria that the ARC had assessed. Now,
Senator Carr, the minister has put on the record his reasons for rejecting these three. And the reasons are 4 simple words: not value for money.
I see. Okay.
Not value for money.
Okay.
And that is an overriding concern when we have to act in the Australian taxpayers' interest.
What was the criteria of measurement of value for money?
Oh, okay, Senator, that's not helpful.
Senator Pratt, I know your value for money.
Senator Pratt, that interjection's not helpful. I don't think it's assisting your colleague.
Look, I'll always give you that respect.
I wasn't saying you're not. I'm asking the question.
Really? I think it's another way that Labor senators like to disparage women of different kinds of political view, Senator Pratt.
All I'm saying.
So let's up the tone of things, shall we?
Okay, Senator Pratt, no more interjections, please, Senator Carr.
Simple question. What is the criteria for measuring value for money?
You've asked for that to be provided, and it's been taken on notice, and you will get that.
I haven't had an answer.
My understanding is that it was taken on notice some time ago.
No.
I'm sorry, Senator, would you like to ask the question afresh?
Yes, please. Could you tell me what is the criteria for measurement of value for money at the Australian Research Council?
Senator, the minister has discretion in relation to his decision making.
Thank you.
And Senator Carr, I should add that in doing so, the minister exercises that discretion in accordance with the precise framework you enacted when you were the minister in this portfolio.
Stop.
It hasn't changed since that time, Senator Carr.
The law has not changed. I never rejected the one grant.
You set up the framework.
No, listen.
You set up the framework,
the Act was
Senator
actually changed prior to my time, but neither here nor there.
You certainly didn't change it.
No, I did not seek to. I didn't need to. I did not need to. The question arises as to whether or not there is a criteria for measurement of value for money other than the minister's whim.
Discretion is not something...
Another word for whim.
No, you know full well, actually, as an experienced Minister of the Crown, that discretion has many bounds, things like reasonableness. A discretion cannot be exercised, for instance, unreasonably. And if discretion were to be exercised unreasonably in considering something like value for money, it would not be a valid decision, Senator Carr. You're experienced in these things as a minister, but don't let that get in the way of your theatrics. The minister here acted quite properly, and you know it, using the framework that was in place when you were minister.
Ms Selke, can I ask you, there are 138 members of the ARC's College of Experts wrote an open letter to the minister expressing their deep unease at the minister's intervention in the axing of these 6 grants. Now, that's 65% of the 213 members of the College of Experts. That's correct, isn't it?
Those numbers
mathematically,
sound correct.
I think I can add that up, yeah. Now, the ARC, I presume has a minister responded to the letter?
No, Senator, I thought no, not that I'm aware of.
No, thank you. Has the minister, sorry, Mr Cook, would you like to help me on this? Sure. Has the minister responded to the letter from the 138 members?
Happy to take that on notice, Senator Carr. I'm not aware of that.
Not aware
There's
of that?
hundreds of letters in every day, so I'm happy to take that on notice.
Fair enough. But, and the ARC hasn't been asked to respond on behalf of the minister?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator, no.
Have there been any other members of the college have withdrawn since the December announcement?
Senator, we have 2 members of the college that resigned a few days early from the end of their appointments.
Yes.
After the decision.
Did you mean to say end of their terms?
Yes.
End of their terms.
So their terms were due to come to an end at the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
And so, and did they give a reason for their withdrawal?
So both of them expressed concern, I suppose, with the decisions.
Thank you very much. Now, I just wanted to be clear. Senator Faruqi said that she understood that there'd been 6 replacement grants actually funded for the 6 that had been axed. That's not your understanding?
No, that's not correct, Senator.
No, I just wanted to be clear about that.
You know, I don't have a copy of the document she's referencing.
Because if there had been 6, that'd be a really interesting question, how that came about. But you're saying it didn't happen?
No.
It's not my understanding, Senator Carr.
That's right.
But of course, the government should be recognised for providing nearly $1 billion through the ARC to support this research.
And look, we've listed the 6 today. Can you just give me the names of the universities of each of the name of the researchers as per the letter I've outlined earlier today? We take it on notice.
So the Finding Friendship in Early English Literature is the University of Sydney. Mm-hmm. The National Forgetting and Local Remembering is the ANU. Mm-hmm. Cultural Production of Religion by Science Fiction and Fantasy Novels is Western Sydney University. Mm-hmm. China Stories under Xi Jinping is University of New South Wales. New Possibilities, Student Climate Action and Democratic Renewal is Western Sydney University. And Playing Conditions, How Climate Shaped the Elizabethan Theatre is the University of South Queensland.
So do you have the description of the Student Climate Action and Democratic Renewal?
Not with me, Senator, no.
Can you give that to me on notice, please?
Yes. Can I just... Sorry, Senator, before I take that one on notice, can I just note that you know, there is a reasoning not only from the ARC but from all grant programs that generally we do not share information in relation to rejected applications or unsuccessful applications because of the potential that leads to, you know, concern being raised about them as researchers. So I just note that...
appreciate the point, but look, this has been a matter of public controversy. I'm not seeking information that's not widely discussed. So it's in a different category already.
And of course we wouldn't want to prejudice the ability of universities who are otherwise quite handsomely taxpayer funded to themselves invest in researching in these important subjects.
Nor reapply because there could be a change of government. Right?
At some point will be.
That's right. Well, you know, can I keep going on the questions here? The letter of expectations that you've already referred to, the revised national interest test. Now, what are the plans for consultation with the sector in regard to those revisions?
Senator, there are a number of things in the letter that we will want to consult broadly with the sector on. In the immediate, though, I've been speaking with the Advisory Council in its current form in relation to some of those aspects, and will continue to do that. The national interest test, as I mentioned earlier, is about, I believe, 2 things in the Minister's expectations. One is clarifying for researchers how to best present that, and also therefore assist in assessment of the national interest test. And in turn, the letter also refers to ensuring greater uptake with industry and ultimately, as we said earlier, greater translation of the research to achieve national benefit. So there are 2 aspects that we're working on in that regard. So clarity in relation to information for researchers, as well as how to improve translation of those.
And would that have affected the 6 grants that were knocked back?
The information will largely be contained in the information to applicants in those changes. But again, I'll just note that the Minister is the decision maker in relation to those grants and has that discretion. Okay,
so the Minister's letter basically asks you to assess the national interest test, doesn't it? That's correct, isn't it?
I'll just check the wording. That the assessment process and recommendations for funding made to me demonstrate a clear public interest from the significant public investment in university research.
But the process is to ask you as the CEO, and the Act gives you considerable powers on this in terms of administration of the gives you the powers to make these recommendations. But he's asking you to assess the national interest test. Is that right?
And yes, the CEO also currently does that assessment as well.
That's right. I'm saying within the current...
yes, Senator.
So I just want to be clear, is there any possibility that this will lead to delays in the assessment of grant applications?
Senator, I think the delay at the moment is only in us finalising some language so that the guidelines can actually be distributed. Okay. In turn, that leads to delays in the running of that round.
Now, look, the way I read the Minister's letter, it is he's proposing another committee be established to assist you in assessing that. Is that correct?
Senator, yes, he's asked for greater input from industry and end users.
Yeah, okay. So this is an additional committee, though. I want to be clear about that.
I think I see where you're going, Senator. Yeah. We would want to make sure that we weren't adding time.
No, I understand that, but this is an additional committee. I mean, for a government that likes to cut down on bureaucracy, I find it extraordinary that he's asked for another committee.
Well, quite frankly, I'll beg your pardon.
Just to be clear, my understanding about the committee is actually about a designated committee in relation to ARC governance, not about national interest tests specifically.
Well, isn't this what the letter actually calls for? Another committee to be established?
For governance, you're asking questions around national interest tests.
Yes, I am, but this is specifically around national interest tests. Is that not what the committee's there to do?
So under the letter that I've got here in front of me talks about, which is the letter of expectations, in relation to strengthening the national interest test, I asked the ARC to consult with the research and end user community as well as the Department of Education, Skills and Employment to prioritise the extension and enhancement of the national interest test to increase its transparency in the ARC grants process. I asked for a proposal to enhance and expand the role of industry and other experts. I don't have anything here which says by creating another committee to do that.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's how I read the letter. But so tell me this, are you establishing another committee to assist you? Because that's what I thought you were saying to me just...
Senator, I should have been clearer. It's not necessarily a committee, but the Minister has asked for greater involvement by industry and end users in consideration of the NIT.
Will you be establishing another committee?
That decision hasn't been taken.
I see.
Senator Carr, can I just... we scheduled a break at 4:30 for our
and Senator...
look, you know, I've got this shocking proposition to put to you, Mr Chairman, that is...
We've got a lot more questions.
No, well, I'm very efficient when I want to be.
Okay, all right, you might be nearly done.
If you're prepared to give me a little leeway,
yes, that's
I would
fine.
like to finish I could finish my whole contribution and disappear.
Okay, we'll take you at your word. If you can keep that to 10 to 15 minutes,
yes,
I'm happy to do that.
Yes,
Senator Carr has a good track record on that.
Yes, I do. I think I keep my word on this.
Over to you.
It always depends on the answers, that's my caveat. Now, so you're saying there's no additional committee to be established to provide additional advice on these matters, which is not what I thought you were saying just a couple of minutes ago.
So what I'm saying, Senator, is that we are still looking at what that additional process will be.
I see.
So to be as clear as I can be, we are eager to have the Discovery project guidelines available for applicants as quickly as possible.
Righto.
We are therefore looking at the NIT and the way in which we provide explanatory information to researchers on how that can be achieved.
So, Senator Carr, the additional committee that is referred to in the letter is in relation to governance and supporting the ARC in its governance, much like was done for the National Health and Medical Research Council.
Got that.
I know you want to be quick, but I just want to make very clear this is about improving governance, and I'm sure you wouldn't reject the importance of that.
No, but I have raised this issue of the National Advisory Council at the previous round, the failure to meet and the failure to consult with the Advisory Council on a number of critical issues.
Then I'd suggest a governance committee is in order.
No. What is the relationship between this committee, this governance committee as you describe it, and the ARC Advisory Council?
So what I was trying to, I suppose, get to is that we are still considering the best way to meet this objective in relation to it. So we haven't finalised arrangements in relation to that. There are a number of ways in which you could receive additional advice from industry members or from the College of Experts in relation to this.
So are you thinking of expanding the Advisory Council, or are you establishing a new committee?
I'm not thinking about expanding the Advisory Council. I don't believe there's a need there, but the Minister has directly asked for us to consider greater involvement of industry and end users. And that might be in relation to the College of Experts or in relation to another mechanism in regard to it. And we haven't determined how we'll move forward in that area at this stage.
When will you determine that?
I expect that it will be over the coming months.
So is there a... what's the process of making a decision?
So the process of making a decision in that one is for us to actually come up with options, potentially, and then consult in relation to those options. This isn't something that I think we should take lightly.
It's quite incredibly serious. If you're basically subverting the Advisory Council...
Subverting, sorry, Senator,
subverting, it's the word I used. Subverting.
We object to that characterisation. That is not its purpose. You know what good governance is, and good governance is what
we haven't seen a lot of it. We have not seen a lot of it.
That's what the committee's all about, and I wouldn't want to see you stand in the way of that.
Well,
I should just note, Senator, that point's quite clearly made in the letter, that we need to ensure that we have greater interaction with the new advisory committee.
Can I take this on notice, would you please? Could you clearly there are sixes and sevens about where you're going with this. I'd like to know, is there how the committee is to be chosen, how is it to be appointed? Is there how a shortlist would be constructed, the terms of reference, what grants will be involved in this committee's decision making? Will it be making decisions in regard to grant applications?
Will we have a committee being the first?
Well, that might be a good start, but given the Minister, as I read that letter, we could get into that. Is it just linkage grants or is it other grants?
The request is in relation to the assessment of NIT in general.
I know.
So it's for all programs.
That's right, all programs. Yes. So it has quite it could have far-reaching implications. So can I ask this? Is there expectation that the proportion of research programs that ministers referred to in regard to the national, the manufacturing priorities, and they go through resource technology, food, medical products, recycling, defence, space, will they be providing a proportion or a percentage in monetary terms of all programs, or just the monies in regard to linkage?
Linkage.
Just linkage,
yes.
Right? Okay.
And Senator Carr, I think an important misapprehension you might be working on is the idea that this is something that is different or subverting, or I think you used the word subvert.
I did.
Now, that fundamentally misconceives the language or the concepts in the Minister's letter, which very clearly says it's about building on the expertise of the existing advisory committee. It's about allowing them to have more resources to be able to do what they do better.
Right. Well,
then can I just... sorry, my apologies, but there are two discussions here about potential committees. There is the advisory committee and its reformation, and that's quite clearly a very important step for us to undertake. The other issue is in relation to purely about the NIT.
Yeah.
The advisory council's role covers all of ARC's
absolutely
aspects.
And you are, in terms of the Act, I draw your attention to the Act and the special role the CEO has in the Act.
Yes.
Right, because there was a transformation of the way in which the CEO and Advisory Council met when the Act was redrawn. I draw your attention to that. Now, what is where do the humanities and social sciences fit into this evaluation?
Senator, there's no separation between them.
No, so how do they fit in? Or are they to be excluded like
in the same way they currently do?
Yes, really.
Senator Carr, you're really asking for
detailed
the office,
questions.
Well, for the officer to speculate in circumstances where this is a process that is at its early stage.
Yes. When did this letter arrive?
It's important to be reasonable about these things.
No, I'm being very reasonable. When did this letter arrive?
The 6th of December.
6th of December, early stage. Early stage. Minister's letter, 6th of December, and we're at the early stage. I hope there is a change of government and there'll be another letter that'll arrive. Well, now, in regard to the metrics that have been referred to, the Minister's letter talks about metrics being set. Now, what are those metrics?
I assume you're referring to the ERA metrics?
Yeah, well, that's what the letter talks about. the focus on metrics. Now, what are those metrics that you're going to apply?
Senator, there is further work to be done in that regard.
Indeed, there is.
So just in relation to ERA, the review of ERA and EI has only recently been completed. Substantial work is underway in relation to that activity, but yes, the letter does ask us to look at additional metrics in that regard, and therefore that's work we need to progress.
Indeed. It talks about like patents, IP and commercial agreements on research practices.
That be added.
Yeah.
Yes, Senator.
Any risk associated with that, Ms Silky?
Risk, I would have... so sorry, Senator, we're still working that through, but again, I'll just note that ARC grants are focused on both fundamental research through discovery largely, and with linkage focused
and applied
more as we move along that
and
pathway.
Applied. And without fundamental research, there is no commercialisation. But if you apply these metrics, you may well distort the entire assessment of Australia's research sector. Would you agree?
You need to have balance in the way in which you look at these, and there will be some programs for which they have more relevance than others, depending on where they are in that pathway.
Now, in 2018, the Men Minister Tehan asked the ARC CEO to review the 2015 National Science and Research Priorities and then apply those to the ARC National Competitive Grants. Where's that at?
Senator, are you able to assist? Then I'm sorry, Senator, I don't...
Early days, perhaps?
I thought you were asking about the 2015 review.
I'm talking about the ministerial request from the 31st of October 2018.
I'm sorry, Senator. I don't think we're able to assist you today on that one.
Why? Why not?
Senator, Sarah Howard, Branch Manager at the ARC. Just to clarify your...
Good evening. I'm sure you'll love coming along here as well. So,
yes, thank you, Senator. Just to clarify what the question is about
the
science and research priorities.
On the 31st of October 2018, Minister Tehan, as he was then, asked the ARC CEO to review the 2015 National Science and Research Priorities as they applied to the ARC's National Competitive Grants Program. And I've asked you, what's happened to that review?
Senator,
I don't have.
Then, Senator, we can't assist with that.
Right.
I have some notes here that say that was requested.
Yes.
But I don't have anything.
Okay. So you'll be able to provide me with the results. Was the review concluded?
It sounds like something the witnesses will need to take on notice.
Bet they are. And I'd like a copy of the report, because I presume they're published, weren't they? I mean,
Senator, I have no details.
Obviously miss a lot
in
this agency, but you'll be able to point me to where they've been published?
I will find out the information and come back to you.
And I'm just, given the relevance of the particular reports, the ARC regular reports on its funding outcomes, I'm wondering how this will align with the national manufacturing priorities, which are now taking this increased prominence. How are they two linked together?
Again, another piece of work that we're doing at the moment, Senator, and also not only the national manufacturing priorities, but the letter of expectation also asks us to look at other government priorities as well.
All right. Now, the
Which in effect is the, same alignment as the science and research priorities, as in priorities set by government.
Yes, indeed. The national manufacturing priorities talk about the primary focus on the prioritisation of research investment. Now, I'm wondering if you can explain to me, given the Minister's letter of expectation, have you got any understanding of what those words mean?
Well, Senator, if you're asking about that paragraph and what it is, so we're currently looking at how that might be adopted, but currently there is a lot of alignment anyway in relation to our programs. So, but we're hoping to work that through. Again, we need to consult with the sector in relation to that activity as well.
So you do have an understanding of those words, do you?
The paragraph as a whole, Senator, yes.
The paragraph as a whole, or those words?
I suppose I'm having trouble finding the words you're quoting as I'm reading the paragraph.
I'll let you off the hook here. Come back on notice, all right?
Thank you.
I hope you're not questioning the ability of
no.
this outstanding CEO to read.
No, I would never do that. But I would question the draftsmanship in the department that's written the letter and asked the CEO to implement such vague and incomprehensible directions.
Senator, just to be clear, we met with ARC CEO a number of times in relation to the letter to enable ARC
to explain it?
To provide
translate
feedback.
It into English?
Sorry, Senator, I'm just trying to explain the answer.
Yeah.
To enable this ARC CEO to actually provide feedback on the letter, they received hard copies of the letter, sought feedback from the department. The department sought feedback from the CEO before the letter was finalised.
Okay, and you still missed it. You still, after all that, you still missed it.
Senator, the letter
Some things never change, do they?
The letter is very clear in
Senator
relation
Carr,
to
with
those
your
things.
theatrics, you want to be on an Elizabethan stage doing some play about climate change.
They wouldn't have me.
Kim Kardashian theatre on the stage.
Can I ask you, Ms. Oakey, is there an upper limit on the percentage of grants aligned with the national manufacturing priorities in the linkage program?
So, Senator, are you referring to the letter and the request in relation to 70%?
Yeah. Have you got any understanding of the upper limit?
At least 70%, Senator?
At least, is it? But any sense of upper limit?
Senator, it may well be the case that in any round there could actually be a higher level than that.
I mean, you don't. It's not. That's not the maximum, is it?
No.
What about how does it affect the Centre of Excellence program?
Centre of Excellence is part of the linkage program.
Yes,
Senator.
I know. So how does it affect it?
Again, we're working through the detail at the moment.
The Minister's request to expand and diversify the College of Experts by adding industry and end-user experts, is that going to be applied to all the grants as well?
The assessment, the College of Experts, Senator, applies to all of the programs. We have the ability to bring in additional assessors where needed. But yes, it would apply to all of the programs.
And quite frankly, it just makes sense that end users should have some input into the things that are researched. It's a matter of basic common sense.
I'm not arguing the toss. I just want to know, if you actually had a collaboration fund built into this, right, through the research and development taxation system, you'd actually get a much better response on all of these things. But that's a policy question, which we're not here to discuss. Can I ask, in regard to the CEO's resignation, was the department provided any advice as to why she was resigning?
No, Senator. I understand the letter went from the CEO to the Minister.
Yeah, I've got the letter. It doesn't give a reason.
Sorry,
It does not give a reason.
Which letter are we talking about?
Professor Thomas's letter.
So all I know is Professor Thomas's letter that went to the Minister.
I'm just wondering, given that she bent over backwards, right? She gave them their sensitivity file. She basically indulged in the quite extraordinary measures in terms of the attacks on researchers. Everything this government asked for, not just that, everything this government asked for, and the Minister came in over the top and knocked off 6 more grants.
That is,
isn't it possible that there might have been a perception by Professor Thomas that she lacked the confidence of the government?
You can draw whatever inferences you like. There is actually no evidence for that. And if you have a question for Professor Thomas, you should ask Professor Thomas.
But she's not here. She has resigned, hasn't she? She's not on leave or anything. We had that conversation last meeting about top secret long service leave. There's none of that, is it? It's actually a resignation, straight up?
Professor Thomas finished with the ARC on the 31st of January this year.
Thank you.
And the things she wanted to put on the record as a basis for her resignation were in the letter. It is a brief letter. If she had more to say, I have no doubt the very capable and formidable Professor Thomas would have said it.
Okay, and just my final point, the preprint issue. I asked a number of questions in regard to that, and frankly, I want to say to you, the ARC has failed to answer the question. A specific question about the number of people that made applications for appeal. The ARC responded by this, said, how we appeal? I said, I wanted to know the number of people. That wasn't provided. I wanted to know how those people were affected, how many people were affected by the decision, which was an ARC decision. No fault of their own stuff, you know. It's the issue that I wanted to raise with you. And I'm just wondering if you go back to that question and answer the question properly, consistent with your obligations under the Senate standing orders to do that. I'd appreciate that.
Do you have a number there?
I'll give you a number. I should be better organised than that, but why don't I just send that to you through the number? But just want to indicate to you that the answer that you gave me was not an answer at all. It was a process answer that said this is the method by which people are able to appeal, not the number of people who are affected, which is...
I have information, Senator, in relation to the number of appeals.
How many people appealed and how many people had their appeals upheld?
So there were 28 appeals, Senator. There were, in addition, the Appeals Committee applied the same arrangement to another 4 applications that they acknowledged had a preprint arrangement as well. All of those were found to be were overturned. So they had been found to be ineligible. They were subsequently, as a result of being considered by the committee, found to be eligible.
So that's
so
32?
They all continued. 32.
32. And have they been? There's been no disadvantage applied to them?
Of those 32, Senator, a number of them were then in the highly ranked group and went forward for decision.
So there have been...
So I don't believe so.
Sorry, can you just be clear about that? Forward for decision, does it mean they got their money or not?
So 6 of that 32
yep.
were in the highly ranked group and were recommended for funding, and that funding was awarded.
Thank you. And of the remaining, what's happened to those, the 26?
They were all unsuccessful in the round.
So they've had to reapply, or...?
They were unsuccessful in the round. They can apply.
They can reapply?
They can reapply.
With no loss, no penalty for the...
No, as I understand it, Senator, that number won't be counted
That's the point
towards their applications.
Look,
yes, thank you.
I don't think it's... You know, it might be fair enough that they weren't up in terms of the various other criteria, but my issue was that they were knocked back on the basis of your decision, which was proved to be incorrect. But if they can go forward and apply again and not be disadvantaged, that's the real issue that I want to pursue, and that's what you're telling me now is happening.
Yes, that's correct, Senator. The Appeals Committee found that they were actually eligible, and hence they continued in the process.
And I do thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I'll put the rest of my material on.
Chair, before we adjourn, in light of the insinuation that has been throughout Senator Carr's questions this afternoon, suggesting that there is something in the nature of political interference in research. I don't think I'm mischaracterising your criticism here.
No.
I think it's important to, for completeness, table a press release from the time that Senator Carr was Minister, from the opposition equivalent in Senator Abetz, in which Senator Carr himself was being criticised for political interference and intimidation in research selection processes, just as it doesn't make it true now when you insinuate it upon the current minister. So I table that.
Senator Abetz made wild accusations. Not one grant under my term. Not
Senator
one.
Carr, the Hansard tells a story.
Okay, we
No,
don't
one
need to-
grant
The
was
Hansard tells a
overturned.
story.
Is the committee open to having that
I
tabled?
don't mind if they table it.
Okay,
It's-
well,
but Senator Abetz did
take
not
that as-
know his ass from his elbow when it came to these matters.
Okay.
Well, respectfully, you're making much the same allegation.